with you.
It's lovely to be here with you.
And it's so nice to be here in a place where there are people and dogs. Welcome.
But I think we should also mention, Sonia, that you have a dog. In fact, you have a Jack Russell.
I do, yeah.
And when I asked Sonia if Ella was coming tonight, she said, quote, she likes early nights.
I was projecting.
You were projecting, but I think we would have all liked a Jack Russell here tonight. So shame on all of you for not bringing your dog.
That is for another event.
Yes, yes. I'm also going to try to convince some of you, or all of you, to adopt a dog from Lebanon before the night's through. So if you're curious, it's going to happen.
You are truly one of those people who does not require an introduction. But I do want to say, for those of you who are wondering what is behind all of the headlines, Fatima is, and of course you know this, the most extraordinary writer. She is a novelist, she is a poet, she is a thinker. She has been a steadfast supporter of Palestine. She has used her millions of followers across social media to mobilize them to speak out against the genocide. She is also a board member of South Asia Speaks, which is a program for emerging writers in 8 countries in South Asia. She loves dogs. I mean, what more could you ask for? She is also an extraordinary friend, and to read her book early on and to have the honor and privilege of blurbing it, I have to tell you, reading that book was an extraordinary experience for me, because it showed me a side of Fatima that I didn't know. You have been incredibly strong in the face of this experience. And a lot of people who know you and love you were not aware of what was going on in your life. I think that by writing this book, you have shown an entirely new degree of moral courage. And I think that reading this book is going to make is going to have a tremendous impact on people who have found themselves in a similar situation as I'm afraid too many of us have had. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia. I feel like I should say that Sonia and I became friends against her will, because I read Beautiful Thing, and I was in Karachi reading it on a Kindle and was so blown away by Sonia's writing that I found her email on her website and then wrote to her. And in fact, one of our first conversations was about dogs.
That's correct.
Was in fact about Coco.
That's correct.
And so we had a long distance friendship, and now here we are.
Here we are. We were at an event together for the book when it was launched. And while you were signing books, somebody came up to you and said, "Is this your first memoir?" And I was like, no, she wrote, Songs of Blood and Sword. And you said, yes, it is. Tell me about that.
Well, I wrote Songs of Blood and Sword now, oh God, when did it come out? A very long time ago, almost 16 years ago. But I thought of that always as a book about my father and a book about his life. And I wasn't very much in it. So I was in it in that I'm finding the information and talking to the people, but it wasn't really about me. So I never felt that was a memoir. And this, I almost didn't really, I was always surprised when it got described as a memoir, because for me this is almost like a diary. It's something much closer to me than a memoir. And it does feel like sharing something beyond private, actually. I mean, it took me so long to tell my friends even about the things that, are the subject of this book, because I was so ashamed and because I felt angry at myself for having endured what I did for so long. So it did feel like something a little bit different than a memoir, because I feel when you read memoirs, it's always about how the person overcomes something, and they usually have a lot of foresight into what's happening to them. And I didn't. When I was living through all this, I had no idea what was happening to me. And I was lost and bewildered and lonely. And that's what I wrote. And I think it's only in your diary that you can admit those things to yourself.
I just want to say, for those of you who haven't read the book, just very quickly, this is a memoir about you finding yourself in an abusive relationship, believing that this relationship was what you wanted, what you needed, and finding it difficult to extricate yourself from this abuse, and then eventually finding redemption and courage and power through the love of a Jack Russell.
Yes.
And you use Coco, your wonderful, how to describe Coco, that's for another time. But
Sonia has met Coco, so.
But you use this relationship to talk about so many things, that it really about power and about privilege and about gender relations, and there is so much of depth in this book that goes beyond your personal story, which is why it is going to resonate with so many people. But my question to you is, because it's so personal and because I feel like you're almost hardwired to be a very private, and I'm going to use the word secretive. I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but you are somebody who holds things very close to you. Yet you choose to go and make public this very private part of your life. Why?
Well, I am very private and I am very secretive, so that's not, I don't take it derogatorily, but it's because I was raised in an environment that had to be secretive. I mean, I remember after my uncle was killed when I was quite young, I was 3 years old. I remember sometimes my father saying to me, you can't answer the phone. And I couldn't answer the phone because I loved to talk. I mean, I still love to talk. And if I answered the phone, I would chat away to whoever called. They could ask me anything, and there I was, you know, where are your parents? Oh, they're not here, you know. Oh, I would say things, and I remember periods where my father said, you can't pick up the phone. Or he would say, if you pick up the phone and I'm not here, you cannot say I'm not here. You have to say I'm here. And I understood information as being necessary to survival. And I was always like that. Again, you know, my brother, who didn't grow up in quite the same environment, but, you know, similar enough, my brother will be on a plane and someone will be like, where are you going? And he'll tell them his life story. And, you know, there I am, like shaking my head at him. But because I feel it's a form of protection. But in the case of what happened in The Hour of the Wolf, it was the opposite. The secret didn't protect me. The secret was part of what damaged me so much. But I was probably a great candidate for a magnificent narcissist because I knew about secrets and I was good at them. And so if you want to isolate someone from their world and you want to treat them in a way that is cold and calculating, you don't particularly want them broadcasting that to their friends and family, and I was good at that. I could keep a secret. I could, you know, hide what needed to be hidden. I think I'm a little less like that now. It's also very exhausting, you know. I'm so secretive that in all the years that Coco was alive, until she had a book written about her, I wouldn't even write her name on social media, you know. It's called a C, you know, this mysterious way. Now, what knowledge could people have gleaned by the full name Coco, you know? I mean, no one can know what her name is, and people are like, oh, C, is it some from mythology? Is it a classical name? No, it's Coco. But I'm trying to let a bit of that go. But I do think that at the end, the same thing that caused me to keep the secret which was shame, is the reason I broke it at the end, and the reason why I felt it was important to write the book. Because if I had this kind of shame, and I really always thought of myself as a strong person, an independent person, you know, and I protect my boundaries, I think, quite well, physically at least, you know, you can't really push me around in that sense. But I was so vulnerable in this other way. And I thought, if I carry all this shame, what are other people feeling? And maybe there is a value in breaking the dam. And I really, actually, I was nervous about that. You know, before the book came out, we spoke, and I was feeling a bit anxious, and I've struggled with anxiety all my life, and it did give me a bit of sleeplessness. But there's something really liberating about just admitting, you know, just saying I was ashamed.
Yeah.
I was still ashamed, but it's lifted off me in a way.
But I feel like part of the generosity of the book is that, I mean, it changes how people perceive you. And you have been a public figure for as long as I remember. When you reached out to me, you were already, everybody knew who you were. And people see you in the papers, and you see you on social media, and you're intimidating, but what can I say? You have a very powerful, glamorous public persona, and with writing this book and exposing yourself as so many things, among them, of course, being vulnerable, you took a risk.
I think that the one thing I feel has always been very important to me as a writer is that I've always written about things that deeply move me, whether it's things that enrage me or things that disturb me or things that I'm really taken by or entranced by. I've always followed those instincts, and I don't think I'm the kind of person that writes about something because they feel they have to. I'm okay with being quiet, you know. I don't feel I need an opinion on everything, but I am pretty strident about the opinions I have, and this felt important to me. And I did think, I mean, there was the same part of me that felt ashamed, also thought, oh my God, now people are going to think, you know, this and that and all these things about you. But I really did feel like if I had to swallow a bit of that shame and a bit of that embarrassment, so talk about something that I really felt was important and that maybe might allow other people to have similar conversations, then I'll take it.
There is another risk that you may have considered, which is that women are expected to write memoirs.
Yeah.
We are supposed to always talk about our feelings.
Yeah.
You write about politics. You have a column for Zeteo. You have used your platform to advocate for Palestinians, and that's just one of the many groups that you speak about. You are an extremely political person. Was there a risk? Was that risk, the professional risk, the perception of you as a professional, as a thinker, as somebody who is a voice in politics? Was that something that you thought about?
I did think about it. Yeah. You know, I think when I had signed the contracts for the book, when I'd sold the book and I was in the period of writing and editing, I'd also been asked by Al Jazeera to do a series on the genocide in Gaza. And a part of me, which really doesn't like TV and feels like a part of me was like, no, do it, because you're gonna have a book out about this dog, and you know, you need something to keep yourself a little bit serious on the. And it was a totally irrational thought, because obviously that happened way before. You know, our memories are so. I don't even remember what I did yesterday personally. Forget what I did 2 years ago. But there was a part of me that did worry. Yeah. But at the same time, more than that, I really worried about exposing all this, how it would open me up to more intrusions. And I have felt, you know, and I say in this book that I'm not a confessional writer. I'm really not. And I'm not the kind of reader who likes to read about, you know, I don't like those authors who everything has to be about them and whatever they're writing about is something they've gone through. I'm not really crazy about that.
Yeah.
So the thing I worried more than the perception was, now that I've said this, am I going to be expected to answer other things that maybe I don't want to talk about? But I think at the end of the day, I felt damaged by a certain discourse that happens around women that says, you're strong, you're clever, you're tough, you know, no one can treat you badly, like, good for you. I felt damaged by that discourse because it's not true. and it's pernicious, because the moment I was treated badly and I was kind of hooked in a situation, what took me so long to get out of it is I didn't think it could happen to women like me, you know? And I don't think it's fair for girls to be told that they're strong and therefore untouchable and, you know, unvulnerable, or they're doormats. I mean, it seems horrible to do that to young women. And as well-read as I was, or as traveled as I was, or as whatever as I was, you know, I didn't get out of it. And I had friends that would talk to me about, you know, emotionally abusive relationships, or controlling family members, or whatever else. And I didn't even have the perception that I could relate to any of it, because it couldn't happen to a woman like me. And that's, I suppose, at the end, what really pushed me over the edge in writing it. Because I don't think someone who's controlling and coercive is looking for a woman who is subservient or delicate or fragile. I don't think so, because I think the allure of that kind of aggression in someone is the woman who's confident and chipping away at it, or the woman who's secure and putting her off kilter, so now she's unbalanced, you know. And I think imagining that our strength or our knowledge or our guts or whatever makes us safe in any way from that kind of relationship is dangerous.
We're going to go in for a reading, but before we do that, I have one more question, which is about the man.
Yes.
Who is referred to throughout the book as the man.
It was the nicest thing I could call him.
So good. No further questions.
No, really, what was your question, though?
That was the question.
Oh, that was the question, okay. Okay. So, the puppies are an endless source of fascination. When they approach Coco with their serrated, knife-like milk teeth, she bolts. I teach them tricks, and I'm enraptured when they seem to have learnt their names. Even though they are roughly the size of hamsters, they fight like stallions, rearing up on their hind legs to brawl. Everything I own here in Italy is torn and covered in white Jack Russell hair. But my attention has never been focused on anything quite like this before. Carlo, the last born, sleeps upside down, hanging off my lap like a supine bat, head flung back, spotty ears limp. He is only 2 months old and still seeks flesh and warmth when he sleeps. So he twists and turns, adjusting his floppy body until he finds skin to tuck his nose into. I'm keeping him, the one that bit my lip off, not once, but several times. Allegra named Carlo after a recently beatified saint who died as a young man. But he's more like Carlos the jackal than Carlo the teenage saint. Untamed and untrained, they leap at everything, unafraid, ready to best all forces. But except for Carlo, they are equally ready to crouch and lower their ears in submission if defeated. When I put them in their pen to sleep at night, one sticks her head through the bars, another one climbs out of it, and yet another, Carlo of course, uses his teeth to unlock the grill. When I scold him, he glares at me and barks. He still doesn't know who is in charge here, me or him. Me, I tell him. I lick their faces and I growl at them. I am in charge. But Carlo, with his wild heart, is not convinced by my power. For small creatures such as we, Carl Sagan wrote, the vastness is bearable only through love. It's from his only full work of fiction, the novel Contact, about a scientist whose father died when she was a young girl. I think of this line when I'm with the pups. They like to sleep on our necks, I later learn, because of the pulse that throbs there, reminding them of their mother's heartbeat. But touch is also provocative, and I am shredded for my constant forgetting that they are dogs, not babies. I try to show one of them a video and have my bottom lip nearly taken off for the effort. Friends pause when I tell them this. You were showing the puppies? The puppies? A video? Yes, a video, I say. It was of a dog watching a horse race. I thought they'd like it. I know they are not human babies, and though I hunger for motherhood, the thought forming all my waking hours, I don't quite see how it matters. I see how energy flows and how the puppies are sensitive and receptive to it. What a terrible thing love is, to be so wholly involved with these lives, from birth through every waking moment of their days, and then to have to let them go. You speak into their soft, folded, furry ears, and feed them with your fingers, and have one bite you drawing blood, and another one lick your wounds, and then that's it. At 3 months, they're off to other homes, gone. It's nearly 2 months later when I realize why I know this feeling that has sat with me since they were born, a full and attentive but fearful love. I've had it all my life, the sense that you must love someone with all your might, because they will be taken away from you. It's only a matter of time. So you must love them now, and love them strong and hard. I hold the pups when I realize this, utterly overwhelmed. If you surrender to the air, you could ride it, Toni Morrison wrote in Song of Solomon, a line that has always seemed to me crystalline guidance on how to navigate the terrible anxieties of life. Only the fools among us think they can fight fate and win. But I do not have my father's romance with the world or his radical acceptance of destiny. At times I am afraid that I will be heartbroken for the rest of my life. I think a lot about broken hearts in my quiet hours of the pandemic. It's a glorious thing, love, for its ability to break and be reformed, break and be reformed over and over again. This staying alive is so fragile, so miraculous. Just 2 weeks before he was murdered, Malcolm X had been invited to speak to students in Selma, Alabama. Since I first read his autobiography when I was a teenager, I have been moved by Malcolm X, not just by his fearlessness to speak uncomfortable truths, but by his personal journey of struggle and transformation. To me, he is a modern prophet of redemption, a seeker and a man whose greatest fight was within himself. In our secluded forest in Italy, in the late hours of the night, sleeping on the floor next to the dogs, I read Malcolm's February 1965 speech from Selma. It's the first time that I've seen this particular address. I read it again and again in the dark, the only light, the blue glow of my phone. Later, I find grainy black and white video, which I bookmark and listen to on my walks. Standing at the pulpit at the Brown Chapel AME Church, Malcolm X offered a prayer to his people. I pray that God will bless you and anything that you do, he said. And I pray that all of the fear that has ever been in your heart will be taken out. This is the greatest benediction one can have, the removal of terror, and only love can bring that.
Thank you. I feel that a lot of what you write about is actually about your dad. So before we go to the Coco questions, which are essential,
Yes.
can I ask you, what was your dad like?
He was, I mean, I'm biased, but he was magnificent. And he was magnificent because for all the privilege and all the tragedy that he had known in his life, he could have been really insufferable. And he was the absolute opposite. He was funny, and he was charming, and he was kind, and he loved dogs, and he was gentle. And it's really thanks to my father, I think, that I was able to survive life without him. Because all the love and attention and support he gave me is really what has carried me through till this day. And I never heard as a child, I never heard anyone tell me, you can't, or girls shouldn't, or you mustn't. And he gave me the sense that I had the right to think what I wanted, to be what I wanted. And that's a gift that, you know, not just girls, but I think people don't often have. And at the same time, he never lied to me. So he never pretended that our life was simple or easy. And he was always preparing me not to have him in my life. And that was very difficult. But it also made him incredibly wonderful. Like the story I always remember, and I wrote about this in songs, but I remember once joining film club at school. I was in the 5th grade, and I thought this was like an incredibly sophisticated thing to do, to join film club. And I told my father, and everyone was a bit older than me in the club, so I really felt like I'm doing something really serious here. And it had snowed in Damascus, and it didn't often snow in Syria, where we were. And it had snowed that day. And 10 minutes into the club, I hear this noise, and I look out the window, and it's my father, and he's like banging on the window. And he's whispering to me and saying like, come. And I'm like, I'm in film club. And I was like, no, I'm not coming. And he opens the door, and he comes in, and he was so handsome and so wonderful, you know. And he came into the teacher, and he said, hello, I'm so sorry, Mrs. So-and-so. I'm Murtaza, I'm Fatima's father, and I'm really sorry to disturb you, but I have to take her. I really have got to take her with me. She has to come. The teacher was, you know, oh yes, of course, go. And we leave, and I think, oh my God, who's died? You know, because I thought, what are we leaving? Are we moving? What's, you know, because we all. And he said, just get in the car, just get in the car. And he drove us to the mountains outside of Damascus so we could play in the snow. And even when I remember that story now, I want to cry, because it's such a wonderful thing to be outside yourself for someone else. And I know I struggle with it. I struggle to be present for my friends, or even for my own little babies, and they're much smaller, or for my dogs. And he had this amazing ability to do that. And it was really lovely. And we have a picture of a snowman he made. Because he brought things with him for the snowman. I mean, so we had to find stones for the eyes, but he had a carrot. I don't know how he brought a carrot with him. I mean, he was really not very domestic, you know. But he found something to put the carrot in, and we've got this wonderful picture of him in a leather jacket, like smiling next to this snowman, and it's just such a wonderful memory.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that really comes across in your book, which is, to me, another very risky thing you did, which is why, just one more reason why I admire the book, is you talk in a very fulsome way about how much you want to have kids.
Yeah.
And part of the reason you're in this relationship with this dreadful person is because you're like, you know, clock's ticking.
Yeah.
Gotta get moving, gotta have those kids.
Yeah.
And he promises you that it's just about to happen, and you're holding on to that.
Yeah.
But again, as a writer, as a thinker, as all of the things that you represent for us readers, for you to come out and say, hey, you know what? This was about the kids.
Yeah.
Risky.
I think so, but I think at the same time, I think a lot of women feel that. And I do think a lot of women our age, or, you know, our generation, we were kind of sold this really bogus lie. We were told, like, you can have it all, and like, you know, everything in the 90s was about like a woman in a pantsuit with a briefcase and a baby, and then, you know, we got hit by the pandemic, and not just the pandemic, but a catastrophic world that is ugly and avaricious and violent and cruel, and those of us who, I think, bought that lie, we worked and we did all this stuff and we have time, and then you get hit with a pandemic and you think, oh my God, I don't have nothing is in my control, nothing is in my hands. I've got done well with my work, that's great, but I'm lonely and I'm scared, and you know, what what do I do? And I really did struggle with it, because I was so happy when my friends, you know, had children and, you know, were able to do this thing I wanted so much. But I also would see it and think, oh, it's never going to happen for me. And my friend Allegra, who's here, who I write about in the book, is really an eternal optimist, and she would always tell me, it is going to happen for you, it is going to happen to you, don't worry, you have time. And sometimes I believed her, but sometimes she would tell me really silly things, like she would say, do you know, I read this wonderful story of this Danish princess, and she just got married at 96 to the love of her life, and he's 105, and it took them a long time because the laws in Denmark didn't allow them to meet, but they're married now. And I would think, oh my God, I'm going to have to wait till I'm 96 to have kids. I won't be able to have kids. Or Leg would say, no, you'll have kids. You know, a friend of mine is 61 and she just had a child. And I would think, Allegra, you know, this is not going to happen to me. But as it turned out, Allegra's optimism and faith really was vital to me feeling like it was possible. And before the age of 96, and that's a true story, she did tell me that story. Or Allegra would say, oh, that's this wonderful story, it's such a romantic movie, we have to watch it. And like, everyone dies in the film. And Allegra would be like, wasn't that beautiful? And I'd be, no, it's not beautiful. But I did struggle with it. And I thought it was kind of a trope, you know, this thing of biological clock. And there I was with this dog. You know, when my dog when she didn't have puppies, I really struggled, because I could see she was in pain. And then when she did have puppies, I did also struggle, because I thought, this is this incredible experience that my dog has had that has enriched my life, certainly, being a part of it, and seeing this instinct that she had. And Coco, I mean, there are people here who have met Coco, and so we don't have to gloss over it, but Coco is not good with other dogs. Like, Coco hates other dogs.
People also.
Coco also hates other people, but she really hates other dogs. And, you know, we were worrying, like, how will she raise this litter? But she was such a beautiful mother. She was guided by something primal and really touching. And it did cause me so much pain. And it is what James Baldwin said, I think. You know, you think you're alone in the world, and then you read, you know, you pick up a book, and I'm sure other women were struggling with what I was struggling with. And so I felt like I had to put it down in its rawest form, because that's what it is. It really is not possible to adulterate it and make oneself seem more intellectually minded than one was. I really desperately, desperately wanted a family.
And Coco giving birth somehow brought clarity to the situation that you were in?
Well, Coco is such a meanie, you know, and she seemed to really enjoy the process for the first month, at least. And there was something so beautiful, especially in that period of the pandemic where we were cut off from everything. And I think we were starved of things we'd taken for granted, like friendship, like touch, like seeing someone smile on a subway, or, you know. And seeing Coco with these tiny creatures really did bring things into focus. And I am often teased by the people who know me, because I'm always comparing my children to dogs. And I mean it in the best possible way. I mean, they're really very similar, because they're totally innocent and helpless, and they need us for everything, you know. And all your interaction with them is teaching them how to be in the world, whether they're dogs or people. And I was really moved by it. I wanted so much to do that again and again and again. And when it was time for those dogs, well, first I refused to let go of the dogs. So first people would say, what are you going to do with the puppies? And I was like, what do you mean I'm going to keep them? And they said, well, you're going to live with 6 Jack Russells. And I was like, well, yeah, what are you implying that I would sell them or I would give them away? And I thought it was And the only person as mad as me was Allegra, who was like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, we should we should have.
But she wasn't going to keep them.
Well, she by proxy was going to keep them because, you know, we were together a lot. And so people would say, but are you crazy? You can't have 6 dogs. And Allegra would accidentally, you know, step on one of the puppies. And then she would offer to keep all 6 out of guilt because she felt. And after about 3 months, both of us realized this was ridiculous. Like, there's no way you can live with 6 puppies. And so then I had to make certain compromises, and I had to say, well, okay, I will give them away, but I will only give them to people that I know personally, love, can follow up with, you know, whose family I know, they come from good backgrounds, like I was really South Asian about it, actually. And Allegra would say, like, oh, what about this person? And I would say, are you kidding? Like, I don't know where she comes from. And she would say, yeah, you've known her for 5 years. And I said, I don't know any of her relatives. I don't know, has she ever had a pet before? And so I was really kind of strict about it. And then when we finally gave the first puppy away, I mean, I cried. I was crying. I was sad. You know, Allegra took 1 hour to say goodbye to the dog before she left. And Coco was so happy. Like, Coco was so happy. Coco didn't miss her for a second. She was thrilled. So obviously there were differences. But I just really wanted to be rooted in something that was not going to be transient and not going to be taken away from me, and that I could build.
So originally, this was a story that you wrote for Granta magazine.
Well, it was always a book, but because I wasn't telling the whole story, it wasn't really swimming as a book. And so I gave Granta the first part of it. And yeah, it came out in 2022, I think, as an essay.
When did you decide that this was going to be more than about your relationship with Coco and about your relationship with animals and even with this man? Because ultimately what we have in our hands is a book about power, it's a book about politics, it's a book about our relationship, certainly with the animal kingdom, but also about each other. It's about who we are as a species. When did you decide that you're going to blow open this canvas and use the story of your relationship, but also your love for this tiny little dog, and tell a story about, a much bigger story about who we are as a people and where we are heading?
I think the book always had the politics in it. So that was always there. And the mythology and all those stories were mostly there. But after I got married and before I had my first son, before I even knew I was carrying my first son, I had sat down to work on a novel that I had been writing, and I'd put away for a bit, and I sat down thinking, I'm going to fix this novel. And I don't know, I didn't really want to, I couldn't really get into it. And I often pulled up The Hour of the Wolf, which was always called The Hour of the Wolf, and looked at it and thought, but I never really knew how to fix it. And that summer I remember thinking to myself, what if I told the truth? And I think it was only because, I wasn't pregnant yet, so it wasn't that I had some kind of assurance that I might be a mother. But I thought, maybe I need to tell the truth, even just to myself. And if I don't like it or I feel uncomfortable, I'll never show it to anyone. I'll just put it away. And I wrote really what became the book in a sort of frenzy in a 2-3 week period. And then I read it and I sort of thought, maybe I will show it to someone. And it kind of happened like that. And when I wrote Songs of Blood and Sword, everyone used to ask me at events, did you get closure? Do you feel healed after writing this book about your father's killing? And the answer really was nothing at all of me felt healed, or I had no closure whatsoever. In fact, everything felt worse, 100 times worse. I felt re-traumatized, and I was grieving all over again, but in a new fashion, because now I knew so much more and had spent so much time talking about it. I really didn't feel good after that book. But the opposite happened with this. I do feel better. I do feel it was like a letting go. It was like a closing a part of life that I'm grateful for, because it taught me so much. And that had to be put away, you know, in order to do something else. So it kind of happened organically, but really not until it came out have I really felt relief.
Thank you. Let's go into another reading, and then we will open the floor for questions.
Okay, another reading. Here is where, okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Right. There is a version of this story that is a love story, and I've written drafts of that story before abandoning them. I met the man during a dark, strange place in my life, and he did help me through a sea of grief, and I was grateful to him, indebted and in love. Yet I was also incredibly vulnerable. I felt I couldn't speak to anyone, and because he understood my fears of abandonment, he held me tight in our secret. I pushed many times to change things, to force a conversation out in the open and encourage some kind of progress, without which I could never move ahead with my dream of having a child. But I never pushed too hard, partly because I was victim to the same rotten thinking that plagues so many women, that this would pass, and it would pass because I could change him. I wanted a child so much, and I had spent many precious years not having one. By year 7, my logic took on a new, slightly manic overtone. When I had outrun reason, I began to pray and visit shrines and temples on all my travels. Allegra and I drove all day one summer in Italy to see the shrine of Saint Rita, the saint of impossible causes. I bought crystals, I wore talismans, I took vitamins. One day Allegra caught me holding a crystal in the palm of my hand. "Oh, a gratitude rock," she cooed. What a good idea. Old me would have guffawed at the idea of a gratitude rock, a term I am embarrassed to even know. But new me was carrying crystals around, so who was I to laugh at anything? If I couldn't convince the man that 7 years was a terrible amount of time to make a woman wait to have a baby, then God would persuade him, or the dynamic power of tourmaline, or chanting. By my late 30s, I could think of nothing else. I drove myself crazy with a ragged determination to blame everything except my decisions for my failure to have a family. And I had a nagging, reoccurring thought. Maybe I should just be happy with what I have. This little unit of two, human and dog. We were okay. We needed each other, and we cared for one another. Coco was like a child in a way, wasn't she? Without me, she could feed herself for an afternoon, tops. But I dismissed this. Somewhere I insisted to myself, somewhere there was an answer to what my heart desired. I just had to find it. I looked everywhere, until eventually I wondered if I was truly cursed. Back then, feeling unmoored and uncertain of what I was supposed to do with my one precious life, I went to Seville, in what was once known as Ishbilia, and I took a photo of a century-old tile that protected Allah's name. I'm not religious, but when I look at it, it gives me succor. It reminds me that I belong somewhere, and that somehow in this place that waits for me, I will be sheltered from my troubles. In a surah named The Ant, the Quran speaks to us of the deceptions of time and impatience. Now you see mountains, thinking they are firmly fixed, but they are traveling, just like clouds.
Thank you. That was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I'm lucky I've read the book, so I know what I'm talking about. One of the things that I found really interesting about it was it seems to think about how we bring ourselves alive again beyond profound trauma, such as the loss of a parent in dark circumstances. And this is actually really a global question. You know, you're involved with Palestine, but people are facing profound trauma around the world. And you seem to suggest that the only route out is a sort of dance between the self and the world, and some parts of that dance will be dangerous. You engaged with this man, but for reasons of life, and he wasn't particularly good. You engaged with Kemper, who was entirely good. But it seems to me that was a really interesting thing to look at, and I felt very enriched by sort of seeing the honesty in following that journey. Does that seem like a reasonable reading?
Yes, yes. In fact, just yesterday, I was thinking about this, and I think, this is also what I feel about living in the world today, that there is such a battering of what one would consider good, and one feels overwhelmed by, I really don't have I don't have a secular language for it, but we seem to be overwhelmed by evil, the evil possibilities of man. And a kind of insistence on destroying what is good. When I see anything to do with Gaza, of course my heart breaks, but especially when I see children or mothers, who are starving. And Sonia and I edited a book together on Gaza, and a young woman called Noor Al-Yaqoubi wrote an essay for us. She was living in North Gaza at the time. She wrote an essay for us about hunger because she was living through it, and she had a newborn daughter, and how she struggled to feed her child when she couldn't even feed herself. And to me, that is an act of such evil and violence that I don't know how to process it. And at the time that I was writing The Hour of the Wolf, I felt so moved by my dog, and by dogs and the wild world in general, because it seemed to me a place of innocence, and not just innocence, but tenderness and expansive possibilities. And the relationship I was in was the opposite. It was a place that had no kindness, and that was hard and cruel. And the crueler it was, the more I searched for tenderness. And it's very hard, I think, to seek it out. I think possibly because we're afraid. It's hard to seek it out with friends. It's hard to seek it out with our loved ones. But there is something about animals that allows us to let go and to just be with them. And so I think that's a really very close reading of how I felt.
But I think it would be a real gift to many readers because of that interrogation.
Thank you.
We love things other than animals as well. Everybody
Yes.
has their things we love, and it's really about risking to love.
Yes.
That is what allows us to do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Risking to love, that's a really good way of putting it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
Hi.
I haven't read the book, just got it. But my question is about when you've had this experience, how did you reconcile and build yourself to be able to see love and belonging with human beings again? And did writing the book help in some sort? And what advice do you have for people who may have that experience in their lives?
Again, I think I was very lucky to have had the father I had, because he had no bitterness about him. He had no bitterness, and he had this sort of, in the book I call it a romance with the world. It really was romantic. He saw the world as wondrous and fascinating, and never dull, you know, he was never indifferent. And I would struggle with that as an adult because I was angry and I was upset and I did feel scared, but I often remembered my father's wonder and his sort of ability to hold on to joy. And I think it was very important for me coming out of this whole experience to really think of that, to hold on to it, to accept it. And I do think there's something to surrender. There was also that, you know, I remember growing up, there was this sense that my father gave me, my grandmother also had it, that you're so lucky, but not just lucky, but you should every day be thanking God for everything you have. And it didn't seem right to come out of any experience and feel like, boo-hoo, you know, poor me. And I struggled with it, but I feel that so much more now. You know, it feels so shameful to me to even talk about missing my one family member or my 3 family members when we're watching people's entire bloodline be obliterated, and we're seeing 3-day-old babies being killed in Iran, in hospitals. And so I cling to that idea even more, that, you know, this is really everything we have, everything that we struggle with is a gift, and we have to cling on to it hard and tight. And writing the book reinforced that, because I had to remind myself of it constantly. And I was reminded of it constantly because I am lucky, and I feel really fortunate for everything that I've been able to do and see and understand.
Please.
So it's not a question. I just want to thank you for 2 things. Thank you for speaking up about the abusive relationship, because I know somebody who went through a similar situation, and I was also like ashamed of sharing that with my friends. But when I read about that you also went through something similar, I was like, okay, this is not a unique experience. And if a lady like you could go through that, then it's okay for somebody like me to also go through that. And the second thing is that I am doing my master's at SOAS right now.
Oh.
Yeah, so my dad didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
So when I went to uni for the first time and I saw your photo in the hallway,
Oh.
I sent him a picture of you.
Oh.
That's what reassured him.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm in a good institution.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That's lovely.
I went SOAS because of you.
Oh my God. Oh, well, I hope you're having a good time at least at SOAS, and you're...
We got to meet you.
Oh no, I'm really happy that you're out of a bad situation, and I do think it's really, I'm really moved when people tell me that, because I really do think shame has to, you know, all that shame has to be dropped. It's badly behaved people who should feel shameful. You know, it's not anyone who was at the other end of it. And yeah, SOAS. Good stuff.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
I think I've just walked about myself.
Yeah.
That's relating to this idea of shame. I think that celebration of the book is also finding the right language to talk about what abuse is.
Yeah.
This is the first time in a long time we've been able to shape the reality of those who talk abuses.
Yeah.
And own it in a real way and say this is a real thing without waiting for someone to establish what is cruelty, what is kindness,
Yeah.
what is abuse. So it's you know, yourself and so many others who are finally creating that language that you can speak.
You know, I did an event yesterday, and we talked about it, and you know, there's still so much I don't know, and I am learning, and you know, sometimes I will say things like, oh well, my fault was, you know, and I have to sort of be reminded that maybe it's not a fault, it's a and of course I didn't have this at the time. I wish I did have it, but my Instagram feed, as you can imagine, is just like dogs and anything that you can feel guilty about dogs. Like, do you ever wake up at night and look for your dog? Like, I just get all those things at night. But I also get all these great, like, narcissist, abuse, recovery, like, coach type things on my Instagram feed. some of them are really good, you know, some of them are really, really good. And yesterday, I mean, half the talk was about this guy called Narc Abuse Coach. He's really remarkable. And he's Desi, I don't know, he's not Pakistani, I'm pretty sure he's Indian. But he does these things like, you know, watching TV with a narcissist. And you think, no, come on, this is, what is, like, this is, and then he'll be like, this is how a narcissist watches TV. And you watch it and you think, oh my God. You know, it's like, it's every narcissist you've ever met. And I know we feel sometimes a bit saturated, like we're saying, you know, is everyone a narcissist? And I think, yeah, maybe there's a lot of talk, but it needs to be talked about. I think gaslighting, you know, we are gaslit every single day. You know, when you watch the news and you're listening to the Prime Minister, and I don't even need to say of which country, any Prime Minister, telling you, you know, we are fighting for freedom and then their granny is being arrested, or, you know, we believe in democracy and they're stealing elections, and, you know, we are all being gaslit. And it's so pernicious, gaslighting, because you know, a lie is a lie, and a lie is usually a bit sad, isn't it? It's always a bit fraudulent, and you can kind of, it smells bad, and the liar has to work really hard to sustain the lie. But to be gaslit makes you think you've misunderstood something, or you're wrong, or you don't understand, and it's such a discombobulating experience that I do think we need new ways of talking about it, and new ways of releasing ourselves from it, but also because of the world we live in, you know.
Please.
Before I go into my question, I just want to say that it takes a lot of courage to share what you have shared in your book. I'm almost halfway through it, and speaking from experiences of people close to me, I know how much courage it takes. So I commend you for that. My question is, so other than the man, you briefly touched on another family relationship, which is quite difficult. You're quite honest about it. How did you navigate writing about that whilst also protecting closer relationships in your family?
Yeah.
I mean, how did your brother feel about that? I mean, did he read the book?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And yeah, it's very delicate. It's very delicate to be a writer, I think, in general, because you need a certain freedom to write, because you can't write dishonestly, you know. When you write hiding something, withholding something, it shows. And you need a certain kind of freedom, but, you know, we live in the world and we don't want to offend people, or we don't want to hurt people we love. And yeah, I did give the book to my brother as soon as it was finished. And I didn't really afford everyone this option, but I did say to my brother, if there's something you don't feel comfortable with and that you don't want me to say, I'll take it out. But he read it, and I think my brother, I really admire my brother because he's younger than me, but in some ways I feel he's more mature than me, in others not. But in some ways he is more mature than me, and I think he really values honesty. And after he read it, he said, no, don't change anything. You know, and I went back to him a few times and said, should I keep this in, should I not? And he said, no, it's true, it happened, keep it in. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that because it is, you know, such a fraught and delicate space. But I do think, especially from the cultures we come from, you know, we're taught to respect elders, we're taught to never question the parents or family members. And I think we do that to our own detriment. I mean, I know I did a lot. And I wish I had grown up in a time where I was told it's okay, actually, if someone is hurting you and someone is wounding you, then you have the right to protect yourself. And so I did feel it was important to touch on that even lightly, as I did in the book. Yeah. Allegra came to the talk yesterday and she said it was like an Al-Anon meeting, by the way. And I should also say I have no qualifications to give anyone advice or counseling, or don't do anything just because I said it. But But I always do think if I'm struggling with something, I have been helped by friends who have been able to share with me their vulnerabilities and their pain, and so I do think it's good to give back in some way if one can.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any dog question? Anyone want to adopt a dog? In the acknowledgements of the book, you will find a very handy list of places that you can donate to, or adopt. But I'm here for questions you have about that as well.
One last question before we conclude. Talk to us a little bit about your preoccupations right now. What are you thinking about? What are you reading? What are you listening to?
I think my preoccupations are probably the same as everyone in this room, which is, are we living through World War III, and is there going to be a nuclear apocalypse? I do really struggle with that. I do find it really impossible to live my life without a sense of horror and dread. When I'm watching Lebanon being bombed, which is a country I love and have spent so much time in, when I'm watching Iran, and even if we don't want to talk about people or animals or life, to see thousands of years of culture and heritage being attacked, I feel angry, and I do really struggle with that. And it's affected what I'm reading. It's affected what I can watch, because the stuff I like to read and the stuff I like to watch is normally a bit heavy and gritty, and I cannot do it anymore. I just cannot do it because I'm so saturated. I am reading Beryl Bainbridge. I don't even remember the name of the book. It's the book Marigold gave me, and it's really fun actually so far. And it's about a really odd friendship. I'm only on page 30, but I'm really enjoying it. I read Arundhati Roy's memoir. God, her mother. I don't know. Watching, what was I watching? Yeah, it's been really hindered actually. I watched. I used to watch quite good television that was quite gritty and hard hitting and tough, and now I'm really into reality television, like really into it. And I'm making Graham, I'm making my husband watch Love Is Blind Mexico, because I feel like there should be an educational part of it. So I feel like if we watch it in another language, then that's good for us, because then we can learn new words and learn about new cultures.
It's so important.
And I'm learning a lot about Mexico.
You tell yourself that.
Yes. I did say to Graham, should we watch Love Is Blind Argentina next? And he looked at me like, no, why are we watching this? So I'm watching that. It's really fun. And we watch a lot of Miss Rachel, obviously at home, because we have a toddler, and also because we love Miss Rachel. And it is funny because we do have, my brother was visiting, and my brother was singing the Miss Rachel songs in the background, and so there is something to wholesomeness. I really think, I used to think it's precious and sentimental, but I think now it's wonderful, and we have to hold on to anything lovely that we can. And of course I'm thinking about dogs. They didn't ask any questions, there's only 2 of them. But I do feel when it gets to be too much, it is really lovely to have a little furry person there to touch and cuddle, and
Maybe not 3 though.
Well, maybe not 3, but I'll tell you.
Which is the number Fatima is at.
It is, it is the number I'm at. And I'll tell you something really funny. One day I was walking with Pankaj Mishra, who, is great intellectual, great thinker and writer of our time. And he said to me, because I was telling him about how I thought I should have a 4th dog. And he said to me, Fatima, look around you. Do you see anybody here? Do you see anybody here as ridiculous as yourself, standing here with 3 dogs? And right as he said it, someone walked by with 4. And I said, well, what about them? And he said, do you see anyone else? And that was a really wonderful moment. So yes, 3 is maybe not the right number, but I'm pretty sure that once you cross the threshold of 3, it's all more or less the same.
Oh, this was wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Fatima.
Thank you. Thank you.